I try very hard not to let my discipline drop, in part because I don't want to be that.
Nick Thompson just released this fascinating book called The Running Ground, A Father, a Son, and the Simplest of Sports, which is about his complicated relationship with his father and how running played a role in it. He said, mirror, mirror on the wall, we become like daddy after all.
He was blackmailing me, saying basically like begging for money to pay his prostitutes. And like, why did I put up with this? Part of the answer is
for people who are not that way, who aren't broken in that way, they're just like, what are you talking about?
Dad, like, enough of this. We're done. Now you've crossed one too many lines.
Do you feel like running was maybe...
The thing you learn about running, like it's one of the best lessons, is that why did Marcus Aurelius...
Our understanding of who the Stoics were is over-informed by what they wrote and not informed enough by what they did.
Are there other elements of Stoicism where you're like, this is wrong, like this doesn't apply now? I have a funny detail about you and me. So I was looking at my email to like get the address or something. And I saw that you had written a story back, you were writing for BuzzFeed, back 20 years ago.
Okay.
And you wrote a story about Outbrain, or you wrote a story that included something about Outbrain.
Yes.
And this is gonna get interesting. And at the end of the story, Outbrain, you were like, Outbrain sucks, right?
Yes.
And at the end of the story, Outbrain was like, well, we're on the New Yorker.
Yeah.
And I ran the New Yorker's website then. And so that's email, I was sent that story and I was like, fuck, we have to get off Outbrain.
Yeah.
But I couldn't get off them through Condé Nast. And so
for people who don't know, Outbrain was, maybe it still exists, but it was like when you get to the bottom of a story, it was this ad unit, but it didn't look like an ad unit. It looked like referring like related articles.
Yeah.
But they were all paid
and they were like the worst,
articles.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so I had to get off Outbrain, right?
Yeah.
And so, but we're part of Condé Nast, and it's a big network deal. And so we arranged a study where we analyzed subscription propensity if we had the Outbrain model on versus not. And we basically determined that it so alienated our readers that we were losing money by having it. And so I took that study and brought it to Condé Nast, and we got rid of Outbrain.
Really?
And it was actually it was kind of like an important moment in my career, because it was like, oh, wait, you can actually use the data to get to the outcome that is, right for high quality journalism.
Yeah.
And so I found all the trail of all that in my memory bank while getting the address to the studio.
I never wrote for BuzzFeed. I was writing for The Observer.
Okay.
Which was a weird experience.
So I mixed that detail up, but it was definitely you.
Yeah,
it definitely
No, I
popped up.
remember writing that piece because I hated those. I was like, I'll just write about stuff that interests me. And I hated those things. And yeah, it's this sort of blurring line where it's like everyone knew that the economics only worked because it was tricking people.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that you were able to verify, you were able to do some analysis of that, because it's kind of a thing that's common in our society, right? Where it's like, okay, the short-term profit is there, but it's hard to measure the long-term decay of trust or the opportunity cost of having that kind of exploitative relationship. And so a lot of that's why so much stuff sucks, is people who are, now that everything is so highly measured, people are making a lot of decisions that are increasing the per profit click, but not the long-term health of the ecosystem.
And so, we sort of played the game. You fight fire with fire, right?
Yeah.
We came with the data and we proved that it was better for our readers not to have it, or better for economics not to have it.
I had a funny Condé Nast story. So I know Jonathan Newhouse a little bit. He's like a fan of Stoicism.
Oh, he's totally a fan of Stoicism. Yeah.
And we had this, he invited me to some conference in Evian, France.
Lucky you.
Yeah, it was, and it was like a panel. I had to do 30 minutes of work. But I remember we were having this dinner later, and we were talking about running. And he asked me, because he was running, and he asked me if I stretch beforehand. And I was like, I never stretch. I hate stretching. And he was like, me neither. I never stretch. And my wife was like, I'm telling you, you have to start stretching. This is not healthy. And he goes, I've never seen my dog stretch. And I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense, right? And then I got home, we picked up my dog from the dog sitter or whatever, and And then I'm watching her for like 5 seconds. And it's like, dogs stretch all the time.
All the time.
They stretch before they get up. Yeah. They stretch before they lay down. And I was like, it was one of those perfect things where you hear something and you so want it to be true.
Right.
That you're like, yes, the logic of that is
That's very
flawless.
funny. Very
and
funny.
then it is actually not only not flawless, it's just the opposite of the truth.
Totally.
And I think about that all the time.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah.
Well, this is funny. I'm glad you're here. I love the book. I thought it was really interesting.
Oh, awesome. I'm so glad you did.
Yeah.
If you had hated the book, this would be an awkward conversation.
No.
But we still would have gotten through it.
Which leads me to my first question. Well, my first question is, why have I never been asked to write for The Atlantic? And then my second question is, did you run today? You can just answer the second one.
I'll answer the first question. So I'm the CEO. I don't oversee editorial, but they should certainly talk to you. I did. I ran 13 miles around the lake with a guy in Austin named Brady Homer. We had a great time. It's lovely.
It's an amazing trail, isn't it?
Amazing trail, flat, smooth, good. It's a little hot here, Ryan, I've noticed. But it was not as hot as it was yesterday afternoon when I tried to run around the lake and said, nope, going to turn back home.
See, I think that's I was just running in New Orleans a couple weeks ago, and I think running on the neutral ground in New Orleans is one of the best. I was thinking, like, where are the best places to run day to day in the United States? So not like, oh, there's this beautiful run in, Yellowstone or something.
Right.
You couldn't, but like where day to day are some of the best ones. And I think the neutral ground in New Orleans is one. I think Town Lake in Austin is one. Probably up, from like Chelsea Piers to the Intrepid, like that thing in Manhattan is pretty. It's
a little loud.
It is a little loud, but it's, you're not going to get many that length with not having to stop in New York City is pretty rare. And then I just did, along like from Venice to Santa Monica, like that one,
I did that 2 days ago.
Oh,
it's
amazing.
incredible.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
It's incredible.
Yeah, because you're like on the beach, but then when you get to Santa Monica, you're like up.
You're up a little bit. There's nice little trails, but there's so much going on. It was so beautiful. I was doing it right at sunset.
Oh, amazing. But I think the one around Austin is low-key one of the best ones in the United States. And I know you said it's hot, but it's so shaded most of the year that and Austin isn't quite as humid as other places. I find I can do it at any time during the day.
Yeah.
I did it yesterday. It's one of my favorites.
No, it's a beautiful loop. I would add the Washington Mall. It's pretty cool too.
Yeah,
Washington's kind of underrated as a running city.
The problem with that Washington Mall loop is that you have to stop and cross those streets like every
It's true.
quarter mile or whatever, and it's not like quick. It's not quick, and it's not like a New York City thing where you can, you can just jaywalk.
Yeah, but you're also only a couple miles from the Georgetown canals. There's like a lot to say for that.
Yeah. No, I love that run too.
I would take the lake over it. Definitely Austin Lake over the Washington Mall.
It only recently, like the last like maybe 6 years, they put in this boardwalk for part of it. So now you can do the whole thing. It's 10 miles, and then there's just an infinite number of like combinations you can do. It's one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah. So I ran this morning.
But have you done Barton Springs before? Do you swim also?
I've run up to Barton Springs. I've done.
Have you swum in Barton Springs?
No.
Oh, it's one of the great public works achievements in the United States.
That area, I've run by, there are like 12 million people swimming there. It looks very cool.
Yes. And in the morning, there's no one there, and you can do laps.
Okay.
And I love that.
Okay.
Are you a morning person or an evening runner?
I like both. I can kind of run anytime when there's time available. I tend to run to work and from work. So you run in the beginning of the day, you run at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you then you shower at the office?
Shower at the office, shower at the gym nearby. Yeah.
Nice.
It kind of works. Sometimes it doesn't work. Like you forget to bring your belt or something. It's like you're not always completely. And like when you're kind of the boss, you should really look the part, but sometimes I don't.
Yeah. Although, do you find splitting it up? Like to me, it only starts working at a certain distance, not the exercise. Like, I don't know about you, but like if you told me, and people have told me that like the physical benefits of running are actually not that great, like there may even be some costs to it. I'm like, I don't give a shit at all. I'm not running for exercise. Like, so for me at a certain point, the distance, you have to do a certain amount of distance for the mental health benefits to start. Like if I just run 2 miles, I might as well run 0 miles.
Right.
It doesn't, you got to go longer than that.
I don't know if that's true. Like if you're in the middle of a really hard process, you can still get a mental benefit from a 2 mile run.
Okay.
Right. So it actually depends on like, what is it breaking up? Like if I'm on vacation, right, I probably have to go run 10 miles to get anything. But if I'm in like some hellacious week with like board meetings, stress, like all kinds of stuff going on, like I can go run half a mile.
Interesting. Yeah, I find like there's no walking distance so short that there's not some value, but I find like to get what I need to get to even, to like regulate, it's got to be a certain distance. The splitting, I wonder if does the splitting give you twice or is it actually like half? You know?
Yeah, so I don't know. Like I would imagine that the mental health benefits of a 10-mile run are better than 2 5-mile runs, right? Because there's like a little bit of a startup cost.
Yes.
On the other hand, the efficiency benefits of running to and from work and having like some running break, it's like a pretty good life hack.
Yes, of course. And then you're also just saving yourself whatever the commute time.
Totally.
That time was already dead and you turn it into productive time.
Right. And you listen to a podcast, you run to work. It's the way to go.
Do you listen to podcasts when you run or you listen to music?
I never listen to music.
Oh, why?
Well, so I believe that listening to music when you run kind of disrupts the training benefits. I mean, listening to podcasts might disrupt it a little bit too.
Okay.
Like when I'm running a workout, I don't listen to anything. And so the physiological logic behind it is you're trying to like understand your body, right? You're trying to understand your nervous system. You're trying to understand pain. You're trying to like maximize like coordination. If you're listening to music, you might go too fast, right? Like you might be hyped up and you might not pace it perfectly. And then you haven't learned what you could learn about pacing. So if I'm running hard, I never listen to music.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So in the Murakami book on running, he says that you run to acquire the void, right? I find music gets into the void faster. So I'm running for that. Like I'm running to get to whatever that kind of
It's a different void, maybe.
But I find that there's something heightened about the music and the physical. I mean, it can
definitely increase adrenaline, right? And it can definitely like make you go when you sort of want to stop, right? But I feel like part of what you're trying to learn how to do is how to get your own mind to get you to go when you want to stop. And so music it's almost like putting on roller skates. And like if somebody can only run while listening to music, right? Like go get them, right? If it's going to help you in a workout, go get them. But
that's interesting.
I also was like, I'm psychologically scarred from my college coach, who at one point was like, we're here to compete. We're here to win. We're here to train hard. And if you don't want to do that, then put on some music and run around Campus Drive, right? And so like that moment stuck with me. So it's both these like pure physiological, neurological things that I'm talking about. And it's also that like young Nick was scarred at age 18.
No, I'm sure. I think we all pick up certain habits or values that were like an offhanded comment from someone.
Yeah.
That if you ask them about it in depth, they'd probably be like, oh, I didn't even mean that. Or it's not important.
Yeah.
But I get your point. I'm like that when I see people swimming with fins. Like when they're doing, I'm like, what are you doing? I don't get it. You're cheating the whole thing that you're supposed to be doing. I don't get it. You're still swimming the same distance or you're swimming longer distance. Why not just, what are you doing? What are you trying to be aerodynamic for? Doesn't make any sense to me.
So that's a little bit how I feel about music. Anyway, so I listen to podcasts, but not when if I'm doing a workout, I'm not listening to anything.
Yeah, I think this is all probably totally baffling to some people. Like I was talking to my wife about this one and I was like trying to explain that like, this is what I have to do to get to even. Like this is like, just like, whatever you like, that there's just a certain amount of physical activity and if I don't do this, like I'm just totally dysregulated.
Yeah.
And that this is like I think she was resenting or somewhat peeved about how much time it was taking and, or this was like a hobby. This was a thing that I was enjoying. And I was like, I am enjoying it, but I don't think you understand.
Right.
This is like table stakes for me being a functional member of society. Like without this, it's not working. And then for people who are not that way, who aren't broken in that way or didn't get hooked on this coping mechanism in this way, they're just like, what are you talking about? This doesn't make any sense.
You remind me of I had this conversation before an ultra run and I was sitting with this guy and he's like, I don't know, 75 years old. And I was like, what would you run tomorrow? It's like, I'm running the 100 mile. It's one of those races you get out there. And it's like, how long is it going to take you? He's like, well, I want to get it done in like, 30 hours. And I was like, I don't know how it came up. I was like, what does your wife think about this? And he's like, well, she doesn't like it, but I told her it was either this or a blonde in a Corvette.
It's his midlife crisis thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're in healthy marriages, everybody recognizes that there are things the other person does that are good for their mental health, but take time. And certainly I have that conversation with my wife.
No, and I've found like if I do other stuff, like let's say I want to do CrossFit or I want to do jujitsu or some other fit, it doesn't like, there's no overlap. Like I'd still have to run.
Right.
So like I can't trade one, like swimming a little bit, but not like I couldn't, if I swam for a week, I'd be like all fucked. You know, like I can substitute it maybe on one day, but like not 3 days in a row.
Yeah.
Or the whole thing starts to get a little wobbly. But you could be like, hey, it's the same amount of time. You burned the same amount of calories, you know, or what, but it doesn't matter. It's just the kind of regulation.
I mean, the other argument to make to your wife, just to help you out here, is that it's by far the most efficient way to do it, because you don't you don't have to go to the pool, right? You don't have to go to the jiu-jitsu class. You don't have to schedule it, right? Yes. Like you don't have to worry about the time you're leaving. You just open the door and you go and you come back.
Yes. The only time they've appreciated that efficiency is like when we travel. Yeah. Then, you know, I get up early and I do that. And then the course of the rest of the day, I'm like showing them all. I'm like, I already know my way around here. I've already looked at the boring things that you don't care about. So we can cross those off the list.
Yes.
And then
this is good life hack. This is good stuff.
It's like you're doing it's like a golfer walks the golf course before, you know, they play. And it's, you're sort of getting your sense of the city.
You can also so the other hacks for helping your marriage, like I'm not, how old are your kids?
9 and 6.
Okay, so you're like the same. Mine are 17, 15, and 11. But like obviously the running stroller is a huge hack, and then running to errands, that's super useful, right? Okay. Like, and then dropping your kids running while they're doing their thing, and then bringing them back. Then your spouse A doesn't know you've run, and B you've got in your workout, right? Like. You drop them at like the camp where they're going to be for an hour and a half. You run for an hour and a half. You drive them home. You're in the plus, right? Because you've done the errand.
No, I know this hack very well. Yes, this is mostly what I do. Where I drop them off at school, I run, and then I come to the office. But you're sort of you're not running. You're not driving to the place that you're going to run, or you're piggybacking it with the other thing.
I say it kind of as a joke, but like part of I mean, I've run pretty aggressively now for 30 years. And part of the way I've made it work with a busy job with 3 kids who I spend a ton of time with and a wife I'm devoted to is by like filling it into these cracks.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you find, and then also you think about this, they're just now two, like one of them I can kind of convince to get in the bike stroller, even though he's like technically over the weight limit. Yeah. But you just realize like, oh, we spent like hundreds of hours together doing this thing over the years. Yeah. Now they're now it's like, I used to be able to justify the walks because it's like, not justify. They didn't have to consent to the walk because I could just strap them in. Yeah. And then they were just there. Right. And now it's this awkward phase between, well, first off, I have to like bully or bribe them to come, and then they want to stop, like, you know, 60 seconds in, like, what are we turning around? It's like, we're not even at the end of the driveway yet. And then they're a little heavy to carry, you know, and I can't do both of them.
We'll wait for a little bit longer. So now I train. I just turned 50 and I wanted to run a sub 5-minute mile on my 50th birthday, and my 15-year-old paced me to it. Wow. Right? Like this. So I now run with the kids. It's amazing.
So I'm thinking about trying to do this before my 40th birthday. So I ran a 5:02 mile my senior year of high school. And I remember going, that's good enough. Like my parents forced me to pick a sport. So I picked track and cross country. And I basically never really tried. Like I was in that teenager rebellious thing where it's like, you try kind of, but not enough that if you don't succeed, you would have to look in the mirror and feel bad. And so I remember even looking at the clock and going, oh, that's close. I wonder if I'm going to regret like calling it here.
Oh, so you've never gone under 5?
No. I did it maybe in my mid-20s once, but it's been a long time. Yeah. So I was thinking I would try to do it again at some point, you know, before I got 2 years or a year and a half. So I was thinking about doing it again. But so you decided to you've done it before, I'm guessing, right? Many times?
Oh yeah. And you know, I'd run I'd run fast in high school, and then I'd run some, but I hadn't run a sub 5-minute mile and I had run one straight down a mountain, but I hadn't run a sub 5-minute mile on flat course. And I was training for an ultra, and I was like, you know what? I'm also going to try to do it on my birthday. And my 15-year-old son, who's like, he had run a sub 5 minute mile with his, track team.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, yeah, let's do it. And so we trained. We did like 400 meter workouts on the track together. I'd lead one, he'd lead one, I'd lead one, he'd lead one. It was awesome. It's just like great parenting.
Sure.
And like what a cool, fun thing to do for 50th birthday.
And you did it?
I did it. He dropped out at 1,200 meters because he wasn't quite sure how much time there was to go. He thought we were only halfway through.
You just lost count of the laps?
We were in the park. We went into Prospect Park. We're like, we're going to go run a mile. And like, he didn't quite know. He's like, oh, Dad, I thought we were way off pace. I was like, we were like way under. We were like 5 seconds under and you only had 400 meters to go, dude.
Yeah.
He's like, oops.
And how did it feel? Is there some part of you that feels like you're beating time?
Running a sub 5 minute mile at 50 did not make me feel like I was beating time. Running like fast marathons and ultras, I feel like I'm countering the aging effects. I mean, like part of the point of the book, part of what I got into the book, not because I wanted to like write life lessons. I got into the book because I thought there was an interesting story in my father's life. And then there's a very interesting question of why I had been able to run a 2:29 marathon, which is very fast at age 44, when I'd only been able to run like 2:40s in my 30s. So when I was in my physical prime, I was much slower than was in my 40s. So why did that happen, right? And that led me down an interesting psychological explanation that I thought made a good story. And then my father's life's a good story and there are other stories. So that's why I wrote the book. So I do feel a little bit like the point of the book is one of the points of the book is how to counter the effects of aging.
Yes. Well, riding and running are two of the only kind of like elite or difficult things, right? Like you have the arts and then you have athletics where you don't fall off a cliff very young. Like a lot of riders do their best riding very late in life or very, very good riding late in life. And then runners, especially it seems like in the very high endurance level running, not sprinters, but tend to do it later and later than you would have guessed. And this is all compared to, like musicians writing their best album at 23 or a Nobel scientist discovering something in their mid-20s or, you're an old man in the NBA at like 32.
Right. Well, like basically, your reflexes decline pretty drastically. Like you can't hit a baseball when you're 40, right?
Yeah.
Like that's all reflexes, but your like lean muscle mass doesn't change that much, right? So your top end speed changes a whole bunch. You essentially, as you age, like certain things get worse and certain things get better, right?
Yes.
Like you get the benefit of age, you get the benefits of wisdom. There are some like internal physiological changes that happen that help you. There's some in general, like the metaphor like is that you're on a moving sidewalk and it's going slowly backwards, right? But you can use some of what you're learning to kind of go faster than the moving sidewalk is going backwards. So you can still go forwards.
Yeah. And I feel like when I was younger, I could just sort of like rip it out. Yeah. And now I think I'm better, but it's harder. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Like it's
that's interesting.
So, and it's kind of true with running too. Like I could eat anything I wanted. I could get any amount of sleep. I could just get up and leave and immediately. And now like I'm noticing even like I have to think more about like those first couple miles. Like my body is literally warming up, and then there's just a tightness and that wasn't there before. I'm sure
you heal more slowly. Like you get it, like you turn your ankle and it takes forever. Yeah.
Yes.
Like my son and I will both turn our ankle the same day, exact same extremeness, and he'll be like. The next day he'll be back and it'll be like a month and I'm still like, took the ibuprofen.
Like if I sit down to write on an airplane, I'm just immediately fall asleep. Which I did, I might have like an amazing session when I'm 22 on an airplane because you're just physiologically different. And so, but I'm sure that's also true for Tom Brady or LeBron James, but there's only so much they can transcend that at there's still this hard limitation that, like nobody cares what a musician in their 50s is writing as far as their new stuff. They just want to see them perform the old stuff.
Is there any musician who's like struggled in their 20s and 30s and like really like crushed it in their 40s?
Every once in a while, but it's like, and every once in a while, like a legacy act will have a new song that somewhat charts. But like we basically go like, no, after this age, you have transitioned from like sort of one phase in your career to another, writing, and then also comics. I think we let comics bloom slightly later than like, what's the difference between being a comedian and an actor? Not that much, but we would allow a comedian to hit their stride in their 40s or 50s and be at the top of their game in a way that maybe we wouldn't with,
And is that cultural allowance, or is it just like where creativity comes from?
I think it's probably the medium and then culture. And yeah, I think it has a lot to do with what our preconceived notions are, because arguably the musicians are much better. Like they're experiencing, Bruce Springsteen as a songwriter now is obviously better than he was when he was 20. I just mean like he has
more knowledge.
Yeah. But there, I think, and some of the songs I think are really good. And if he had written them in 1983, might we accept them differently? But culturally, we go, no, we don't want to hear new singles from you. I think that's partly it. And then there must also be something about the energy that we expect from some forms of art or athletic. Like the vibe is different. Whereas maybe with writing, because writing is much more about perspective and wisdom and less about energy, we're willing to hear, the reflections of an older person on equal footing with.
Well, you have like fluid intelligence, you have crystallized intelligence. And I think as you get into your 50s, like you have more wisdom, more things, you're kind of less creative. And so it's a different kind of writing.
Yeah.
Whereas in music, you really need like a huge percentage of the new song has to be creative.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what it is.
Yeah. And maybe with writing, you're getting better at figuring out how to do this thing.
Yeah.
And music, it's, there's something kind of otherworldly about the music. It is less technique and more something like it's I don't know, it's more lightning in a bottle than I think writing is, because, you even read about some of the greatest albums of all time. They're like, we worked on this in the studio for a year. And then if you told someone that like your favorite book, that was only worked on for a year, you'd be like, what?
Yeah.
Like there's something about writing and that is, and maybe this is also true for comedy, where it's like, it's not the genesis of the thing that's doing most of the lifting. That's part of it. But then it's the going over it and over and over until it becomes its highest form of what it's supposed to be. So I don't know exactly how this connects to running exactly, but there is.
Well, I mean, one of the things that I'm really interested in is I had this conversation with my mom where my mom was like, well, my reflexes are just getting worse. Yeah. I'm 77 years old. I was like, well, Mom, they are getting worse, but they don't have to get worse. And then I kind of convinced her that they didn't have to get worse. And so we went out every day when we were together this summer, and I would toss her tennis balls like on the porch and like have her like reach out, like working on her reflexes. I would have her like stand on one leg and I would like toss her a tennis ball.
Yeah.
And she was like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, your reflexes there's definitely be pressure making your reflexes worse.
Yes.
But if you're out there with the tennis ball and you're training your reflexes, you're going to improve them faster than you're declining, and your reflexes will get better.
Yes. Yeah, that is also interesting when you look at some of it's probably survivorship bias, but when you look at these like musicians or golfers or athletes that are like still doing it, like, and you wonder how much of it is that they never, even despite the drugs and the drinking and the time on the road, they never like got out of shape. Like they never accepted that they were old. They've just been doing some version of this youthful activity nonstop for this whole period of time. And there's something about that I think keeps you
totally. So one of the things that I believe, this is you don't stop running because you get old because you stop running, right?
Yes.
Like if you stop running, like you'll put on weight, you'll get imbalanced, like things will go wrong. If you keep going, actually, like you'll be able to hold off a lot of the effects of aging. Yes, we all will get older. We all will die. Yes, like that does happen. We all do slow down. But really, if you keep at it and you have a daily habit of running every day, it really will keep you a bit younger.
And this is true inside an individual run also. Like you would think stopping and resting would be helpful. And it's like the worst thing you can do.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, definitely never stop.
Yes. Right.
I mean, in a long ultra, you can like stop to digest like for a couple minutes that you're at an aid station, but no, never stop in a run.
Yes.
Yeah.
So running is this thing that kind of runs through your family. It must be cool to see your kids picking it up.
Yeah, it's wonderful to see them doing it. Yeah, and they clearly have wonderful talent at it. It's great.
Well, speaking of Bruce Springsteen, I was thinking about this thing I heard him say when I was reading your book. He talked about how we can choose to be an ancestor or a ghost in our kids' lives. And that sort of,
that's interesting.
His father was this kind of ghostly or ghastly presence in his life because his dad's haunted by all these demons and he's sort of abusive, and it's just there, and it's this thing that haunts him. And that's very different than someone who has, like a loving parent or grandparent, or, there's some kind of like guiding force in their life from another generation. And this sort of choice is kind of everything.
Yeah, it's very hard to, as a parent, it's very hard to know what you're giving your children. I read about this. It's kind of this funny moment in the book where I run a marathon, and it's during COVID. And so I run with one other person. I run 26 miles on this little loop in Prospect Park, right? And I finish it, and I've just completely destroyed myself. I come back to the house, and I lie under a blanket, and I'm like shivering and kind of convulsing for a couple hours. Yeah. I remember watching a movie with my oldest son, who was probably like 11 or 12 then. And afterwards, he's like, "You know what, Dad? I'm never going to run again." And then the next day,
he saw what it did to you?
He saw what he did to me, right? And then the next day I go out in Prospect Park, and I'm going for a walk. And what do I see? But I see my youngest son like running around the park. I'm like, "What are you doing here?" He's like, "I wanted to run around the park." I was like, "Wait a second. So this very same thing that I just did has inspired one of you to like sneak out for a run?"
Yeah.
But he's like 6 years old. And he's
you
like,
ran into your kid in the park. That's hilarious.
Right. Yeah. Literally 6 years old, right? He's like running around Prospect Park, not the whole thing, but running the center loop. And the older one, and so I was like, "Oh, the very same act."
Sure.
And then, so, the book is partly, it's about other people, but it's partly about my grandfather, who's a great athlete, Golden Gloves champion, who intimidates my dad. My dad's not a natural athlete, hides from him behind the curtains, very academic, doesn't want anything to do with him, and feels just this constant pressure to be a different person than he was. My father then takes up running and has the exact opposite effect on me, where my father's a cool runner, and I'm like, I want to run with this guy, right? And so I'm 5 or 6 years old, and I'm running with my dad.
Yeah.
And now, like, God willing, like, my running obsession will pass in a positive way, that when my kids write their memoirs or think about things in their 30s, they're like, "Oh, so cool that like my dad had this wonderful thing that he taught us and brought us into." Yeah. Not, "Oh my God, my stupid father like would always come home sweaty and smelly."
Yeah, it's like that story about the two brothers, and one is asked, like, "Why are you an alcoholic?" And he says, "Because my dad was an alcoholic." And then the other is asked, "Why don't you drink?"
Yeah.
And he says, "Because my dad was an alcoholic." And so the same event can send people down very different paths.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, you don't know if you're breaking the cycle or perpetuating the cycle in just some new way.
Right. And so, and like, one of the other things that people often ask me is, like, my father, led a very broken life. And by the end of his life, I used to say, people are like, "What do your parents do?" I'd say, "Well, my mother's an art historian and my dad runs a male brothel in Bali." He's like bankrupt. I'm supporting him. And he's blackmailing me, saying he's basically like begging for money to pay his prostitutes. And like, why did I put up with this? And part of the answer is, he always loved me and he always supported me, right? And that's the baseline. And like, if a father does that, then, you owe them a lot.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, like, I could easily have broken with him and said, "Dad, like, enough of this. Like, we're done. I'm not going to talk to you anymore. Like, you've crossed one too many lines."
Did you see him as, how long did it take you to understand that he's this way because of this other person? Like, did you meet your grandfather?
I barely knew him.
But how long did it take you to understand, oh, this guy is this way because of this other guy?
Well, I don't know if he was that way because of the other guy. Like, so for my father has this really interesting life where he grows up in Oklahoma and he's got this intimidating father. It's not really happy. They live on, his father is the president of Bacone Indian University. And so they're like living in Bacone, and my father wants to get out. And he hears about this school called Andover up in New England. He applies. He gets himself a scholarship. He delivers newspapers by horseback to pay for the rest of it. then gets himself a scholarship to Stanford, then wins a Rhodes Scholarship, and then marries into my mother's family, which is like a prominent East Coast family. And my dad is on track, right? John F. Kennedy meets him and is like, this kid's gonna be president before I am, right? And I found his like Rhodes Scholarship recommendations. And the dean of faculty is like, this is the best student we've had since Herbert Hoover, right? This guy's like crushing it.
Yeah.
But then he comes back and he's got his Rhodes Scholarship. He's got his DPhil from Oxford, and it doesn't really work, right? Like life doesn't work the way he wanted it to. And he like can't really control his drinking. He's not really getting the jobs he wants. He's not really on track to become a senator or whatever he thought he was going to do. And then he realizes he's gay, right? And so obviously after I'm born, right? Which thankfully, that's the one argument that, forcing people into the closet in the 1970s was good, because otherwise I wouldn't be here. And so he realizes he's gay, he comes out of the closet. And so this is part of it. Like, why did my dad end up the way he did? It's partly like, he whom the gods wish to destroy, they first make promising. It's partly like not living up to his youthful promise. Sure. It's partly like trying to deal with the chaos of coming out. He's the first openly gay presidential appointee working for Ronald Reagan in the 80s. I'm very proud of that. It's, not being able to manage money and eventually heading towards bankruptcy. And then there's another really important moment in my dad's life, which is there's another guy who we thought of as his twin, this guy, Roger Hansen, who's in a book called Remembering Denny, which is probably somewhere up here. It's a classic. And Roger Hansen is also a Rhodes Scholar, also destined for greatness, also doesn't achieve it, also gay. And Roger Hansen commits suicide, and he commits suicide in my father's garage. And when that happens, my father is like, I am going to be the most flamboyantly open person ever. And so then he just starts like sleeping with everybody and like bringing his like totally inappropriate boyfriends into like every conversation and every meeting, in places like just utter madness. His love life, it's not even his love life, his sex life becomes utterly out of control. And so that is a lot of what leads him into this place he ended up in.
And it's probably the sex life thing is probably connected to the sort of drinking life addict thing.
It's the same sort of thing. Like he never figures out how to deal with his addictions. He never gets the like Stoicism, right? He never like figures out like, okay, this is how every day I'm going to do this and not this. And I'm going to like work through, and he never figures out how to build positive habits, like how to not drink, how to like get control of himself. He's never able to get control of himself. Yeah,
the things are in control of him rather than he in control of them.
He's not, and he never gets, like he never figures out how to manage a day. Yeah. Right. He has lots of dreams. He's amazing to talk to. He has all these big plans, but he never has like an hour where he's like in control. I remember, I wrote a book with him when I was in my early 20s, not a very good book. And, we'd be writing it, and I'd be like, Dad, how's it coming? He'd be like, it's going well. And I'd like look, and he'd be like surfing porn, right? Like he just couldn't do it.
Wow. Yeah. And so running was the one sort of positive habit that he had.
He was able to like at the moment, his worst moments, which is when he's like turning 40, it's time of the divorce, he's coming out of the closet, and it's not easy to come out of the closet in 1982. And
I can imagine.
And he's in DuPont Circle. It's the AIDS crisis. Running like helps him keep it together. Yeah. Right. And so he runs marathons, he runs with me, he does really well. I watch him. It's wonderful. And running is a great force for good. And then as he got older, we would still run and he would still run. And it was a way that he like kept his demons partly at bay.
Yeah. So it's not as simple as going, oh, he had this sort of abusive, intimidating father, and that's why he was. It's that, and then a series of kind of shattering events and a certain amount of pressure that ultimately he just can't handle.
Right. And why he couldn't end up handling pressure, why he couldn't focus that much. On the other hand, the guy is like, he's an amazing guy. Like if you were talking with him, he'd be loads of fun. If you're on this podcast, it'd be super interesting. Like the guy was so smart and like caring and interesting, and people loved him. He's just a maniac.
Yeah. And what's your reaction to all this? Do you kind of go in the opposite? Because again, you could go in one direction or the other. Do you see this and you sort of understand this as a cautionary tale, and you want to button it up and go in a very different direction, or what? Or does that reaction evolve over time?
No, it's very much. I watch it. I'm like, I'm not going to let this happen.
Yeah.
And that's part of my running is a recognition. Like I'm going to stay focused. Like I don't know exactly what the key is to not become him.
Yeah.
Right. But it's clear that I've spent like a lot of my life trying to be like him. I go to the same schools. I do lots of the same things. I'm like, I went to I was at lunch in San Francisco not long ago with one of his friends. So one of my father's contemporaries who's now in his 80s. And another one of their Stanford classmates walks in and sits at a different table. And the guy I'm having lunch with is like, I'm going to try something. And so he brings me over to their table and he's like, Paul, this kid here, he's the son of one of our classmates. You've never met him. Who is he? And he looks at me and he goes, that's Scotty's son. I was like, oh my God. Right. Like, so I'm quite similar in lots of ways. Right. Not in all ways. And so I know that I don't want to be like that. So it's unquestionably a force for focus in my life.
Yeah. It's, there's a famous quote about Tiger Woods, another Stanford person, and it says, after all the stuff had happened, someone who knew him and his father, he said, mirror, mirror on the wall, we become like daddy after all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's true.
Yeah.
And I try very hard not to let my discipline drop, in part because I don't want to be that.
I think about this with my oldest, who's very similar to me. And I try to remind myself, like, I've had 30 more years than him to figure out how to deal with this stuff.
Yeah.
And he is just starting to feel and understand these kind of like forces. And like he has all the same ingredients, but none of the coping strategies, none of the experiences. He hasn't touched this stove and been burned in this way. He's on this path to kind of figuring it out.
Yeah. And
that, like, part of what's driving me nuts about it is like he's doing stuff that I don't let myself do.
Right. Right. And you have to let him do it. And like, he's going to touch the stove and he'll learn from touching the stove.
Yes. Hopefully.
Yeah. And don't touch a stove that's too hot, right? Keep him away from that stove.
Yes.
That's the trick of parenting, right? Like, you've got to let them like take risks and be on their own. And you have to also protect them without like them knowing that you're like, you have to create boundaries and safety that they're not quite aware of. So they feel they have total freedom, but they're not really at risk.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you go, okay, it took me relatively recently to understand, hey, if I don't do X, Y, and Z, I'm not regulated and these things are harder for me.
Yeah.
And it's like, again, I was like a grown ass person when I figured this out. Like, if you had tried to explain this to me when I was 8, I'd be like, what?
Yeah, right.
You're like,
what are you talking about?
Yeah, what are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense. And then even if I was like, okay, I get it, I not only couldn't actually do it, but I wouldn't have literally had the freedom to do it. Like, you don't control your environment or your life. If you're an 8-year-old and you're overstimulated in a school classroom, you can't like get up and leave and be like, I'm going to go to a different, you can't design, you have no ability to design your environment or make choices that are better for you or do things in the order that you would like to do them. And so much of being a kid is like the system, the world is designed for how most people are, and if you're one of those people, you fit really nicely into this thing. And if you're not, you're going to have a rough go of it. And you think about, this is true for adults too, if your dad was maybe straight and maybe had slightly less demons, maybe he does become a senator or like he had all the ingredients and had all the access to thrive in that sort of late 20th century political, intellectual, academic circles. But because just a couple switches aren't the way that everyone else's were, he probably feels totally alienated, like an imposter, or, he's having these feelings that ultimately kind of make him blow it all up.
And if he had been able to deal with disappointment and like not living up to expectations, and there's still some things like I found all of his diaries, crazily, he had like gone to his house, which he had sort of was going to be, torn down while he was still alive. And there was like a filing cabinet out front, and I like open up one drawer and there's a snake in it. And like, he moved to Asia, live snake. He moved to Asia. Like everything was just madness in his life. And I'm like, I'll take these filing cabinets. And I like put them in the back of my car and I drive him back. And then after he dies, I'm like, I wonder what's in these filing cabinets. And it's like bank statements and crap. And then it's like his diaries.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of insight into his life. But there's still things I don't understand. Like I don't really understand like when he kind of started to lose control.
Yeah, it's unusual. It usually goes in the other direction. Right? The story is like my parent didn't have it together
Yeah.
And then they got it together. And when we were both older, we reconnected and figured it out. You had kind of like a Benjamin Button situation with your dad, where he's like, as you're getting older and responsible and mature and thriving and functioning in the world, it's like you have a teenage son.
Well, we would joke about that. He'd be like, we have a reverse father-son relationship. Because I was like, Dad, you've got to like, you cannot go out tonight, right?
Yeah.
Like enough of this, right? Like you have a husband, like no more carousing, right? Like, and you have stuff to do. You have to get your column for the Jakarta Post and you have to file it tomorrow. Like, get that done, Dad. And he's like, no, I'm going out. And you're like, oh God.
Have you had to deal with some kind of codependency stuff from that? Like how, like, because these are conversations you shouldn't have to have. It's not just you. Yes, you had this reverse relationship, but it's probably not good for you to have this relationship with your dad. You should be able to go to your dad and ask for advice about stuff, right?
Well,
he should be giving you hard-won wisdom about how to be the age you are now. And
he did do that, right? And he would help me through any hard dilemma. And if I had he would read my essays, like give me smart commentary on them, right? So he was still very useful in that way.
He can't give you the experience of being a well-adjusted, functioning 80-year-old, because he's not a well-adjusted, functioning 80-year-old. He can't give you that perspective.
He could not do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a eulogy that James Baldwin gives to his father, who is like this, not a guy that he super loved. And he said something about, it's like, it's kind of a ballsy thing to say at someone's funeral, I guess, but he said, like, we knew his sins, but we didn't know his wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
that's
so
interesting.
You tend to just think like, especially when you're a kid, because you're just entitled, I think, to like get what you need from your parents.
Yeah.
And when you don't, all that you feel is that you didn't get it.
Yeah.
But you don't know how hard they were working to give it to you, or how hard they were trying to be different, or the shame they felt about, like, all you see is the binary, like yes or no.
Yeah.
Not what went into falling short. All you feel is that it wasn't enough.
Right. And I was blessed where I had this, crazy dad, and I had like an infinitely loving mother, like infinitely patient, raising these 3 kids on her own. Like, who did an amazing job, like, just creating shelter with the chaos of my father's life around us.
Yeah.
So,
and do you feel like running was maybe for you an outlet? Like running is a place where you're in control. It's simple. I always say, like, I've never left for a run and not like gotten back. You know what? Like I've walked back, but like every time I've left my house, I've come back. So it's like, it's this win baked into your life, into your day.
It's definitely that. So I I run a little bit when I was like 5 or 6 years old with my dad. And then I get back into high school where I, get cut from the basketball team, join the track team. And then like suddenly I'm very good. Right. And that creates this like self-confidence cycle that then helps me do better work, makes me cool at school as opposed to kind of a loser. So it plays that role in life. I then, go to college. I'm not quite good enough. I leave the team after my first year. And I take it back up in my 20s. And I definitely think that what you're talking about, kind of the daily practice, like I've run, I believe discipline is cumulative. I think if you do a hard thing first thing in the morning, it's easier to do the next hard thing, right? I also believe that the focus required for running helps you with everything else. Like if you can go run 2 hours at a focused pace, you're going to have a better time at your hard meeting at work, right? Like I absolutely believe that it creates these habits. And so part of why I do it is this like daily practice of, I'm going to do this hard thing and I'm going to do it again tomorrow. And I think it's going to make everything else in my life work a little better.
Yeah. Like when you're 2/3 of the way into a manuscript and you're like, is this a fucking book? Like this is taking longer than I thought. It's not coming together. I don't want to do it. I hate this. You're like, oh, I know this feeling. Yeah. You just keep going.
Just keep going.
You keep going. And then at some point, you finish and you're like, oh, that was better than I thought.
Right. And the thing you learn about running, like it's one of the best lessons, is that if you run every day and if you run hard from time to time, you get faster. Like it just happens and it always happens.
But imperceptibly so. Like, there's not some magic day where you're like, oh, it's just this cumulative gain that you're getting.
Block by block. I had that feeling this morning, right? So I ran this race 2.5 weeks ago, 100K. I haven't really run much since. I went out and ran 13 miles this morning. I was just like, God, I am so slow. I'm like, look at my heart rate, look at my pace. Like, what is going on? Yeah. I'm like, every single time, right? Like it takes a little time to recover. Like it's hard to recover from a race. It takes a while. But I guarantee you, like, I'm just going to run every day for the next 6 weeks. I'm going to run a bunch of workouts, and 6 weeks from now, I'm going to be back in great shape. Right.
Yes.
And it just happens. And so that was a lesson, like when I was writing this book, which took me, like, I have a hard day job, right? CEO of the Atlantic, I got to work all the time at the Atlantic, right? So I'm working on the book like 20 minutes this morning, or like, you know, like 30 minutes that night. But part of it was the self-confidence from running, that you just do it a little bit here, you do it a little bit there, and like it gets done, right? Eventually it's done, right?
Well, at some point you have the capacity to do a thing that seems unimaginably difficult. So like you run 10 miles and you run 20 miles and then you run 8 miles and you just do this day in and day out. And then when you go do a hard, whether it's a marathon or an ultra marathon, and you go, where did my ability to do that thing came from? It came from these little things. And writing is similar in the sense of like, you worked on it for 20 minutes, you thought about it, you read these books. It's just all this stuff is going in. And then at some point you have like a editable manuscript.
Right.
Like, where did all this come from?
How did this happen?
I was just sitting in here yesterday and I finished the audiobook for the book that I just did. And I'm like, oh, like it was almost, this thing was almost unrecognizable to me, because I didn't ever do it as a thing.
Right.
I did it as each of its component parts.
Yep.
Like one day I showed up and I wrote this paragraph. Yep. And then another day I wrote these 7 paragraphs. And then at some point I stuck them together and moved them around and edited them. But like, there was never at any point, and maybe there are some writers this way, where I had the whole thing in my head and then I went, I'm starting here and I'm ending here. It's this cumulative project, this chipping away, and eventually, cumulatively, you have a thing.
Right. And then when you have the thing, the other hard question is, okay, when do you stop, right? Because like, if I made it better yesterday, that means I might be able to make it better tomorrow. Yes. So when do you call it off?
Yeah, when is it done? And shipping, that is a very difficult.
There's a really big moment in my career that gets to this lesson. It was one of the most important moments in my career. And I was a young editor at the New Yorker, and I guess this would have been 2013. And I was just running the New Yorker's website, and I didn't have any confidence in my writing. Yeah. Right. And I hadn't written at the level of I was a great editor, but I wasn't a great writer. And the Boston Marathon bombs happened. Right. And I'm following it. And David Remnick, you know, one of the greatest journalists in the world, one of my idols, boss of the New Yorker, comes into my office and he's like, Nick, you're going to write about the Boston Marathon bombing. I was like, no, I've got to manage this. I've got like 3 other freelancers we're working with. We're trying to call this guy. And I was like, I don't think I should do it. And David's like, no, you're going to write about it. I was like, what? And then he's like, stop. He's like, this is what's going to happen. You're going to put your phone down right now, and then you're going to close the door. And in 1 hour, I'm going to open the door and you're going to hand me your story. And that's what we're going to do. And so he closes the door and goes away. And so I'm like, okay. And so I wrote the story and it was done in an hour. It was pretty good, you know, but it was like a really good lesson. It was like, he would just do that, right? He would be like, I'm going to write this piece. I'm going to close my door and I'm going to open it in a few hours. And I won't have done anything else in those few hours. And I will have the story for you.
Why do you think he thought you were ready at that moment?
I knew so much about marathoning. Like I had grown up in Boston. Like if there was ever a story that was like the right story for Nick Thompson to do, like it was this story. And, you know, I don't think he knew my insecurities about writing. He, you know, maybe knew it a little bit, maybe intuited a little bit, but he just like, do it.
Well, what an incredible gift to give someone. Right? To sort of like override their self-consciousness, imposter syndrome, whatever, and just force them to do a thing. Yeah. And then you come out of the other side having done it and you go, oh, I can do that. Like,
I can do that. And I like, you know, I ended up writing like lots of good things that I'm proud about for the New Yorker, right?
Well, yeah, like there's some people there that just kind of, there's actually this really great passage. It's from B.H. Liddell Hart, the British historian. He's talking about William Tecumseh Sherman. And he's saying, look, there's a sort of pantheon of military heroes, right? Yeah. And he's like, some of them, your Napoleons, are born just like thinking that they're Napoleon and they deserve to be Napoleon and they can conquer the world. And then there's these other ones, and it's interesting because both Grant and Sherman are very similar in this way, have this kind of unglamorous, slow plodding rise that in many ways is a surprise to themselves. Yeah. But every step of the way, they're accumulating a certain amount of confidence. They're doing the thing. And he says that, like success is much sweeter for them because they earned it.
Yep.
They didn't. And in some ways, you almost imagine, like you think about Julius Caesar famously stands in front of this statue of Alexander the Great in his 30s, and he starts weeping because he hasn't accomplished everything that Alexander had by that age.
Yeah.
And so you go, okay, this guy thinks he was entitled to do it and is disappointed that he hasn't done it. Then when he does do it, there's probably a certain amount of letdown even then, because like you believed you deserved it, and that external accomplishments never give you what they think they're going to give you.
Totally.
But if your expectations are lower, that letdown is probably less a little bit, because when you exceed even your own expectations, you're like, oh, this is nice. Like,
so this is the problem with my father being told by John F. Kennedy that he's going to get to the White House by, before him, right?
Sure.
Like it suddenly makes it hard to appreciate little successes because you really need like big successes. And so, huge success at a young age is a blessing and a curse.
Relatively few wonderkins turned out to be that wonderful. It's like the promise is there and all the ingredients are there, but there's something, maybe it's you needed the drive to really earn it, and you don't have it because you think it's yours, or I don't know. Maybe it's like in the older, less competitive, less meritocratic. Not that our world is perfectly meritocratic, but when they were deliberately excluding large swaths of the population from the competition, you could be mediocre and entitled and still get pretty far.
And now, a lot harder.
Yeah, you're competing not just against men, women, people from all different backgrounds, but also like the whole fucking world.
Right.
Like Harvard used to just be for this small part of the country could go there. And now it's like, no. Do you know how many people live in China? And their best people,
they all want to go there too.
They go here too.
Yeah.
And that can be either really inspiring and invigorating, or it can kind of just
and then it also, like, you can get your credential and you can win in the 1960s in an easier world, and then you're competing in the 1990s and the 2000s in a much harder world,
right?
And that was tricky.
Yeah, I think that it kind of explains the political environment that we're in a little bit too, although there obviously is a youth movement to it. A lot of it is like people going like, hey, like, I don't like this new competitive environment. I'm not as comfortable in this competition. Like, I'm really good at trading stocks, but I'm not good at being polite to people. And you're saying that politeness and respect and collaboration is also one of the skills required to win in this competition.
Yeah.
Fuck that.
Right.
Fuck you. Let's go to this. Let's take this part of the game off the table and just compete in the area that I'm comfortable with. And that's not how it works.
It shouldn't be how it works.
Yeah, no, right. But it's like, hey, they invented the forward pass at some point in football. And so the game changed.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, I just like to smash into people. That's the football I like. But that's not the football we're playing anymore. It's a different, more elegant finesse game now.
And so, one of the skills that's so important, it's going to change even more with AI when it starts changing, like, upending businesses, changing the way we work, changing the way we relate to each other, like the ability to adapt and to play, like to adapt to football where there's no forward pass, to adapt to football where there's a forward pass, and to adapt to football where you've got like half your team is robots. Like, that's like part of the skill for the next 20 years.
Have you read this biography of William F. Buckley? The Sam Tannenhouse?
I haven't read that. No.
It's incredible.
Really? He's a great writer. I mean, Tannenhouse is, and Buckley is an amazing person to write about.
Oh, I would not have. I mean, I was like, do I need to read an 800-page biography of someone I don't care about and also don't like?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I need every page of this.
It's really good.
Yeah, it's really good. And it's kind of the same. You're like, oh, this guy was just born. Well, first off, talk about sort of overbearing fathers. So that's the sort of original sin. And I was fascinated by the amount of intellectual energy. Basically, once you understand the father, you go, oh, all this work and all this thinking and all this sort of rhetoric and elegance and artifice is just trying to dress up the inherent anti-Semitism, racism, reactionaryism of the anti-communism of the father.
Mm-hmm.
You're just like, he can't be like, well, dad hates Jews, so I hate Jews. It's like, well, that's not okay anymore. But I got to figure out.
He could have fought against it. I mean, you do have a bunch of options.
No. Of course, he could. Obviously, that would have been bad. What I'm saying is, he gets the beliefs from his father. He accepts them.
Yeah.
But they're not acceptable.
Right.
So he creates this whole political movement around kind of sublimating the raw kind of energy behind it.
Yeah.
But making it palatable.
So interesting.
And creating a way that other people who didn't get that spoon fed to them can believe, oh, okay, actually, Joseph McCarthy isn't a liar and a drunkard and no, it's actually serving this purpose. And it's like, it's fascinating.
Yeah. Wow. I'll have to go buy that in the bookshop.
I don't know. So the idea of the bookstore is it's just the books that my wife and I have loved.
Okay.
And so I've got like 100 pages left, but I will definitely carry it.
Awesome.
Sometimes there are these figures and you're like, oh, this is kind of a key to understanding not just a moment in time, but then this moment in time is a way to understand like today's moment in time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, my previous book was on the Cold War. It's called The Hawk and the Dove. It's about Paul Nitze and George Kennan. And what drew me to that story is something quite relevant today. So they're like the two people who are key in American foreign policy from 1945 to 1990. They completely diametrically disagree on all matters of foreign policy, and yet they maintain a friendship.
Yeah.
And like part of what drew me to that story was thinking, this is something that needs to be told for today where we have such a hard time talking to each other, right?
That was very common then, because even with Buckley, right? He's like friends with all these people that he is either attacking their lifestyles or their choices. And I can't, part of it's good. And then part of it, there's a professional wrestling element of it that I don't like, which is like you are saying these horrible things or claiming to believe these things or enacting these policies. But on an individual level, you clearly don't believe it. Or
right. That's okay. The professional wrestling analogy is good. But as a general principle, our country would work a lot better if people who disagreed with each other in politics were also having dinner with each other and able to sort of talk, understand, work through
it. Two people who sincerely believe diametrically opposed things, them being able to come together, collaborate, not see the other person as the enemy or a traitor or whatever. That's great. And then
like to understand it's like even just to listen, right? To get outside of your filter bubble and to listen, right? And maybe you don't change your view overall, but you actually understand it in a much deeper way because you've challenged your assumptions. And so much of the problem today is you live inside an information bubble. You live inside a filter bubble. You live inside a social bubble. We've segregated ourselves geographically, right? Like where we are right now is actually, it's great. There's a real mix of people across the political spectrum. But most of America, it's all blue or it's all red, right? And that's a shame.
Yeah, no, I do think this sort of great sort that's happening is beneficial in that way. I think there's no reason that all media has to be based in New York City or Los Angeles.
Yeah, one of the things we're trying to do at The Atlantic, obviously we're based in New York and Washington, but like we're starting a strategy of going to every state, right? Like we're doing a big partnership with the Texas Tribune Festival in November.
They just asked me to talk at that.
You should talk at that. It'd be great. Yeah. I'll be there. So we're spending time in Austin. We're doing an event in every state in the country, right?
Wow.
We're trying to get writers, as far across the political spectrum as we can, right? Yes. So we are doing our best to be a magazine about America.
Yeah, and you need people who have a sort of a basis and a familiarity with other parts of the country. And
totally.
I actually think of all the Trump ideas. Sometimes there's occasionally a good one. I do think relocating certain government branches makes sense. Like I think it's good the CDC is in Atlanta. Why would that also need to be in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, you should. I mean, let's hope the CDC survives. Like I would like it to.
Of course.
I would like it to stay in Atlanta and have as many employees as it did a year ago, but we'll see. Yes, I absolutely agree. Right, like move the government around, put it in different places. And with the Atlantic, I love having writers around the country. You just have different perspective. You learn different things. You want people who come from different schools. It's hard. Like there are a lot of like reasons why journalism centralizes in New York, but do your best to get outside of it.
But a lot of it is because at some point you had to like physically hand someone the draft of your story. And that's not so necessary. Or someone wanted to be able to walk downstairs and look at the printers.
Right.
And so, why it's concentrated there, just like why tech is concentrated in Silicon Valley, historically makes total sense. But for the ecosystem to remain vibrant, you want, I think, kind of a diaspora of people in different
and
places.
we're doing our best.
Yeah, and yeah, there's no reason the writers themselves need to all be in one place.
They don't need to be in one place, and you can send them around, and they can live in Washington, so they can get all their sources, which is very valuable. Has worked out great for us. But like, send them around the country. You show up at DC cocktail parties. Sometimes you get added to group chats. It's wonderful.
Yes.
But it's wonderful to have them going around the country.
Well, it was funny knowing about that story and then reading the book. I was like, I wonder if he had to go on some long runs to process how to handle this.
It was funny. I didn't, because I'm the CEO, not the editor in chief. I wasn't like, I don't know what the Atlantic is going to run today. Like, I'm not involved in that process. And when that story came out, it all was so clear that we were in the right and that the folks criticizing us were in the wrong.
Of course.
And it wasn't like a 60-40 thing. It was like a 99.9 to 0.1 thing.
Yeah, no.
Right?
That one's that's not even like the Pentagon Papers where there's some moral dilemma. It's very clear.
Very clear. And in fact, Jeff Goldberg, the editor-in-chief who gets included in the Signal chat, handles it perfectly, right? He doesn't disclose the classified information. He calls the White House. The White House says, yep, that's true. No problem. We publish it. Then after they've said it was true and after we published it, like Nikki Haley and Pete Hegseth go out and like, that story is false. It's nonsense. There's no class. And we're like, usually it works the other way around. Like, normally you lie and then say it's true. You don't say it's true and then lie afterwards.
Well, the amateurness too of hey, it's not true, even though they could have very clearly looked at the chats and then been like, oh shit, we got to be very careful about how we deny and spin this story because we're setting them up for the next move. What's alarming to me about how that happened, not just the general incompetence of it, but you take something like the Cuban Missile Crisis and you go, okay, Secretary of Defense and the President better be very well versed in game theory because they do something, the other side does something, and this process it can spin wildly out of control. You want someone who's able to have that kind of strategic empathy and savvy.
And so they tell the pilots, if you're shot at, you say it's birds, right? Because they know what will happen if they say they're shot at, right?
Yes. And so to go to get off the plane and be like, there was nothing in this text, it didn't happen, and it's like, he knows,
right?
And so he's in the media, right? So he's seen scandals and covered them, and he would have some instincts as a journalist, even a very partisan one, of how he would attack or spin this story if he was trying to make someone look bad, and he doesn't understand that this. He's so emotional and then nurses these grievances and then so impulsive that he can't think that he's serving to you on a silver platter your next story and the story after that and the story after that. And you go, this is not a guy I want going eyeball to eyeball with the Secretary of Defense from another country.
Right. Yeah, it was a very weird situation. So I didn't actually have to go on any long runs to process this. I just sort of sat back and was like, wow, this is working out really well for us.
I just meant that it's not the long runs to decide what you're going to do.
Yeah.
But just the stress of sometimes you have those days where you're like, have I just spent all day refreshing this as it's coming in?
Yeah.
And those are the days that I feel like I really need to process, or else I'm just going crazy. Because I wasn't my regulated self throughout the day. I was in this crisis mode.
Yeah. No, I definitely had that where you're responding to comments and, there were things that, they were,
it's a perpetual adrenaline dump, I'm sure, for about 72 hours.
And the White House is like, the Atlantic is a failing magazine losing money. And I'm like, no, actually, we're doing great. We're profitable. We've turned the corner. Our subscriptions at a record high. We've been around since 1857. You can say you don't like us.
Yeah.
But financially, I run the P&L. We're crushing it, I got those facts. They're right here. So there were some things I had to respond to.
Well, again, I think you can get used to saying whatever you want.
Well, that was the weirdest thing about the crisis. It was do they think, because sometimes you can lie and BS your way out of something, right? Do they really think that they can lie and BS their way out of this? Because there's screenshots, right? It's not questionable. It's
well, here's what I think has happened. And this is a shift we haven't quite figured out what to do with. Because I just went through this thing where I was supposed to give a talk at the Naval Academy, and then they found out that I was going to mention that they'd been removing books from the library, and they revoked my thing like minutes before I was supposed to go on.
Really?
And so thinking of the old paradigm, I was like, guys, so I knew the person delivering the message is obviously not the bad guy, and is a just someone who's having to think about his pension, right? And I go, I think you think you're going to avoid controversy by not doing this, but you understand it's going to be a lot more controversy. This is how it works. I was like, you've publicly announced this talk. Even if I don't say anything about it, journalists are going to know. Yeah. Some student is going to say something. You're going to get way more attention. And then he goes, yeah, I understand. And then I realized, they don't care about negative attention at all. Mm-hmm. We are post a world where, I mean, the fact that Pete Hegseth did that and didn't lose his job tells you that did the Signalgate thing, it didn't lose his job. You realize, it would have to be almost unfathomably bad, the scandal, that for us to re-enter a world where a New York Times story or a Wall Street Journal story or an Atlantic story helps you lose your job, because you're already unqualified for the job to begin with. And it's embarrassing that you're even in the job. So like this normal world where a journalist reporting that you are unqualified is not serious enough. So what are they afraid of? Like in this case, these people, this is like a 3-star admiral or whatever that is ultimately, making this decision. He or she is worried not about the New York Times piece that I'm going to write about my invitation being revoked or the subsequent, CNN story. They're worried about the president screaming at them.
Right.
Or they're worried about someone coming after them for mortgage fraud.
Right.
Or Elon Musk sending a tweet about them.
Yeah.
Or like they're literally worried about a crazy person showing up at their house.
Right.
Because of the attention. And so I think that's the scary world we're entering, where like it's actually public embarrassment or losing face is no longer an effective deterrent, because on the other side, you have this stick of like violence
And you got to hope that like somehow this reverses and we get a more trustworthy, believable civic discourse. But we haven't been going in the right direction for quite some time now.
Yeah, I don't know how you put that car back on the track.
Well, my hypothesis a couple years ago was that if you could fix social media, right, so that you would go on Twitter, you would go on Instagram, you would go on Threads, and you would emerge with a deeper understanding of the world as opposed to just like a hotter understanding of your viewpoints, right? If you could do that, right, you would solve a lot of these problems. Like if you could have like the internet exist as a place where it's like Kenan and Nitsa, where you're like learning from each other.
Yeah.
And so I tried to build a social media platform. And like the moment to do this is now, while social media is fragmenting and while you have the opportunity with AI. Like AI can introduce you to new viewpoints. AI can help you challenge your assumptions. AI can help you think through things more deeply, right? There is an opportunity to do this. I don't know who is going to do this. And it doesn't seem like the platforms are doing that, because there's obviously a business imperative to, Twitter just moves further and further to the right, deeper and deeper filter bubble. Threads like is countering that, blue sky. But there is a way to get there. Like you're probably in group chats where you can have real discourse, and you're in the group chat because you're like, you agree on something else that put you in the group chat. Like you're part of a community, you're soccer dads, you're whatever. So you have this thing that binds you that's outside of the hard issues. And then you can talk about the hard issues. That is doable, right? And like getting that done at scale is like a project that would do so much good for America.
Yeah, you could argue that Elon Musk might ultimately do the world a service by effectively destroying Twitter.
Yeah.
Like it's certainly gotten worse and had real consequences for how many brains it's broken. But like it's also dying at the same time.
I had, when he took it on, I was like, it's probably going to get worse, but maybe he'll make it better, but it hasn't.
Well, it's interesting that he decided it's clearly like it broke his brain quite some time ago,
Yeah.
right? Like, how does this guy that used to read Soviet rocket manuals and host salons about space so he could figure out the aerospace industry and then the solar industry and then electric cars and batteries and all, like this guy that was this first principles thinker not that long ago, like recognizably a first principles thinker at the highest level, go to a guy that's like tweeting misinformation from like Russian bots. Like how does that happen?
3 a.m, right?
Yes. And hundreds of times a day.
Yeah.
Right. Like clearly, to me, that's one of the starkest examples of like what an information diet can do to a person. I mean, he went from being like as good a shape as you could be in to like one of those people that, you know, is like on the TV shows where it's like, I weigh 3,000 pounds and I have to be lifted out of my house by a crane. Like it's as, he went from as healthy as you could be. I mean, also probably always an asshole and weird and on the spectrum and whatever, but like lived in not just reality, but on the cutting edge of all these breakthroughs.
Right. Like lived in the future and now just.
Yes. Lives in fantasy land.
I do think that the more time you spend on Twitter, like the more likely it is to break your brain. You see that with lots of colleagues. You see that with lots of people you work with, not with everybody.
Yes.
And if you could change the architecture, right? If you could like somehow fix it and change it, or you could build an alternative platform, that would do. I mean, my inspiration for this, project, which we, since sold, shut down, was a conversation with a friend of mine where we're like, what is the best thing you could do for America right now? Like what, like if all the things that one could possibly do, and like part of the reason I work at The Atlantic is like my genuine view that The Atlantic helps American democracy by informing people across spectrum, by like knocking at everybody, by doing deeply fact-checked reporting, and that my skill is like building business models for publications like this. So if I'm going to do something good for the world, it is to make as much money for The Atlantic as possible so we can hire as many journalists as possible and put them into our editorial machine. And I had this conversation with a friend, like, what is the best thing you could like reasonably do for America? It's like, well, if you could fix the way the social media algorithms work, that would be it. But
yeah, no, because it certainly has broken a lot of people's brains. And I do think that's a big part of it. But when I said, I don't know how you put that cart back on the tracks, I mean, like where we all agreed that there were certain things like if you accidentally add a reporter to highly sensitive, sort of war plans, and you don't resign in shame, right? Like that's
or even admit it was the wrong thing to do. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Like so, that's obviously a social media problem, but that's also like that's what happens when you live in a culture or a world where honor means nothing and reputation means nothing. Like that's further upstream, I think, than even social media. When he's asked, right, if he wants to be Secretary of Defense, he should have said, I'll be spokesman for the Defense Department. Because like, he's just like, no part of him is like, I am not if there was ever an instance where imposter syndrome needed to rear its head, it should be here, like it's remarkable.
He really he has a strange sense of what needed to happen, the most important thing for American warfighting. But he did have a sense that like to fix the American warfighting machine, you have to sort of get rid of the trans soldiers. And he really believed that was the number one thing to do. And he was the guy to do it. So I guess in a way I'm defending him. Like I don't agree with what he thought was the central problem in the American military, but he did think there was a central problem that he was the first person.
I think he thinks that's the central problem with the American military and sort of the global ecosystem because he just doesn't know literally anything about it. Like I think all of them have this view, Musk included, of like how the world works from like tweets they've read, like tweet threads they've read, and from like Fox News stories, but they just don't. They don't understand how these organizations and systems evolved, why they exist, and so there is this, and part of that I think is the Silicon Valley thing of like, I don't know anything about this industry, but I'm going to disrupt it, right? Is like kind of become an ethos of all of not like I'm going to understand it inside and out and then fix it or improve it or blow it up because of X, Y, and Z. But it's like, yeah, I get how it works. And then that, it goes to your first book, like take someone like Keenan or like they were deeply informed, not just like on a intelligence basis, but like they knew like all the literature and the class. They
speak the language, right?
Yes.
Like you speak Russian, you go and you live there, and that helps, gives you an understanding. You don't do like one real estate deal for McDonald's in Moscow, right?
Yes.
And suddenly you're the guy to do it. Yeah, we have given up a lot on expertise in our government, which is a real shame.
Yeah, one of my favorite Atlantic writers is Tom Nichols, in his book about the death of expertise. Like just this sense that like I know better because I thought about this for 8 seconds.
Yeah, one of the stories that just crushed me from the last year was the story of the United States Institute of Peace, which is where my dad worked. And like my dad, for all his foibles and flaws, like knew a ton about Asia, right? Lived there, written lots of books, studied it, cared a ton about it. And then, Musk comes in, and it turns out like there's a guy, the U.S. Institute of Peace has been funding, who's been advising us on like our strategy in Afghanistan and like helped us prepare for our meetings with the Taliban. But a long time ago, he worked for the Taliban before he overthrew the government. And then he switched sides, and he'd work for him because that was how you got a job. Yeah. And so Musk comes in, it's like, United States Institute of Peace is funding the Taliban. And you're like, no, that's not what's going on there. Like this guy who 25 years ago had an administrative job, switched side, in fact, advised the Trump administration on how to meet with the Taliban. He got a grant because that's what the United States Institute of Peace does. It funds people who have expertise, who advise our government so we can make the right decisions about policy in Afghanistan, right? But if you like kind of just want to destroy it and what you care about is not expertise in government, but how to get a good tweet, right? Well, then you blow it up. And so the whole institute where my dad spent a lot of his life is blown up with this utter nonsense, right? And it's like, was the United States Institute of Peace like the most efficient organization? I have no idea, right? Based on what my dad said, maybe it could have been better here and there. Sure. But like, surely it's the kind of thing that we should be doing in the world. And to blow it up over stuff like that just made my heart break.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that he basically takes, and he's a big character in the book I'm just finishing, but because I think it's a fascinating trajectory of a human being. But like, he basically takes Twitter, wrecks it, and then, drives its valuation into the toilet, although there's some now financial chicanery about whether it's an AI company and it's supposedly worth billions of dollars.
He's made a lot of money off Twitter, net. I mean, like he's drove the business into the toilet, but he's like used it to help his other businesses and like gotten leverage and political power.
Is that real or is that financial, shenanigans? So put that aside. The lesson he takes from all this is like, this is an effective and smart way to do reforms and changes, right? As though there's not a playbook for hostile takeovers that like has also been, sort of figured out over generations. But probably Twitter did have way too many employees, and a bunch of them needed to be like taken off the books, like for it to maintain its viability. That's very different than laying them all off indiscriminately and then having to rehire some of them and then accidentally laying off the janitor who, cleans the toilets, and now the toilets are overflowing and, maybe there is too many leases on the books, but just not paying the leases is not enough. Like there's a way to do things. And I don't mean it's like, this is how we do things in polite society, but there's a way to do things, and then there's chaos and dysfunction. And like, it's interesting that we have taken a lesson in the dangers of chaos and dysfunction and been like, let's apply that to the place where we make nuclear weapons.
Right.
It's insane.
Let's blow up all of USAID in such a way that we now have warehouses full of food that we were going to send to children in Africa that it's now rotting, and we're not sure how to dispose of it.
Yeah. Like, you could just say, hey, give all the stuff to Africa, and then we're closing it down. Like you can still end up with the same outcome. Just one isn't incredibly wasteful and extra cruel. But if cruelty is the point, as the famous Atlantic story puts it, then you don't care. Right. And then that's actually the algorithm that you're trying to game. Yeah. And that's not good. It's not just not good for the world. It's not good for the people doing it either. It's not good for anybody.
Thing. And like, I think about Nitz and Kennan and like what they would think about this, and just like watching the world of expertise where you fought hard and you disagreed, and then a world where expertise doesn't matter. And like,
okay, but that's an interesting question. Do you think they like, if you drop them into where we are today, yes, they might go, this is crazy, you can't do any of this. But what's interesting to me is how many experts and people who were of and in love with this system even have become those, like, you go, this is a Supreme Court justice. Like, if there's anyone who could be like, I might agree with some of the policies, but I don't agree with the way you're doing it, it would be that person. But I think you're watching how difficult it is to remain sane in an insane environment.
Yeah, it's true. I think that's a good point. And I think a lot of people go along with the insane environment because they're afraid. As you mentioned earlier, they're afraid of the consequences of not going along with it. But also a lot of people, like, some people just feel like, okay, the system is insane and my best role is to do the best I can. Yeah. Right. Like and those, I have a bunch of friends who like work in the Trump administration, some of whom work on like AI policy where like it's actually pretty good. Yeah. Right. Like there are a bunch of like smart people, and I disagree with the way they deal with China and all that. But like, I have a bunch of friends who have made a commitment saying, you know what? This is crazy, right? There's a lot of nonsense going on, but I'm going to go in there and do my best. Yeah. And I do actually wonder with Nitsa, my grandfather, like he would have like wholly objected to everything, but he also might have said, you know what, I'm going to go in and like try to like move it in my direction as best as possible because this is America and we're all committed to America. And that's like the most important thing.
Yeah. And the human capacity for rationalization is immense. Yeah. And the capacity of ego to tell yourself like, no, I'm essential. Right. And I need to keep my powder dry, or I need to be there in the room for when this really bad thing happens. That's, if I'm not there, like it's this sort of,
well, that might be true.
It might be true, but also if everyone convinces themselves of that, then nobody ever actually does it. But
sometimes it's true. What if like, was it true of Mark Milley in the last 2 months of the Trump administration, the first term, that like, who knows?
Yes. No, I think about that a lot because, one of the classic examples in antiquity is like Seneca is Nero's advisor. Mm-hmm. And he has to, he probably is rightfully telling himself, I'm the adult in the room. I'm preventing this from getting bad. He's also the guy that's like, look, I know he just murdered his mom, but like, this is my job, know? And so it's this interesting thing because yes, there are sometimes that person, right? If Mike Pence is not there on January 6th, it goes very differently. And yet, like, almost certainly you are not Mike Pence. Right? like,
but somebody was, there was one person who was Mike Pence, right?
Right.
So how do you know?
You don't. That's like where the sort of academic philosophy meets real world reality.
So do you think Seneca should not have worked for Nero?
I don't know. Well, and then you go, okay, the last time, what happened when we tried to get rid of that one emperor? How did that go? Oh yeah, Rome had a horrendous civil war, and then we ended up with another emperor forever. Yeah. So like there is this, there's a book I'm going to give you in the bookstore about this exact topic. But yeah, I don't know. I think you can debate it either way, and I think it's actually very important that you debate it. Yeah. But it's complicated.
All right, well, let's go to another one.
Okay.
Why did Marcus Aurelius hand the emperorship to his son?
Ooh, this is the infinitely fascinating one.
I don't, this history is not my history. I've like always had I won the Marcus Aurelius Award when I was in high school. So I've always had like a little bit of interest. It's kind of an interesting part of the book where I win this big award at Andover for just like scholarship and leadership. And my dad is drunk and like storms the stage to congratulate me, which was amazing. Yeah, sure. But in any case, like, it's like the perfect life philosophy. You talk about it all the time. It's incredible. Like his writing's just amazing. Meditations are awesome. I really think that like part of the reason I'm so excited this podcast is like the lessons of Stoicism are like so deeply ingrained in my book in like a subtle way, not a way I ever lay out there, and yet he makes the decision that like ends the Roman Empire.
To be fair, it does go for like another 300 years.
Yeah, but like
the decline of Rome
is trajectory kind of like
if you're the last of the 5 good emperors, that says something about you, right?
So what happened?
I know so I think part of it is related to the themes of your book, which is like trauma, right? So 5 emperors in a row or 4 emperors in a row don't have a son, so they get to choose their successor. Well, Marcus Aurelius not only has a son, but he has like 5 sons. Yeah. So it's already complicated.
Yep.
I think one thing we can take from this is why hereditary kingships are bad.
Totally.
Right?
When you have 5 sons, it's easier to not give it to any of them than if you have 1 son.
Right. And so he tries to the plan was to give it to the first one. Then the plan was to give it to another one. Then the plan was to have 2 of them rule as co-emperors, as he did with his stepbrother.
Yeah.
And then the problem is they keep fucking dying. So all of them die. He loses 6 children die before adulthood. So Commodus is the only one left. Which in and of itself, if you're like, why is Commodus as bad as Joaquin Phoenix portrays him, which he is, you go, losing half your siblings before adulthood would fuck you up, right?
So if you're Marcus Aurelius, maybe you should realize that and then be like, okay, I'm not going to give it to this guy. I'm going to give it to this other guy.
Yes, right. But this has also never happened before in human history, where a king has chosen someone over their own children, right? So like this is the dilemma. And this is where I think Stoicism has this kind of idea of like duty and you're not in control and you play the hand you're dealt, maybe falls woefully short in this instance. But like we're told by historians who are writing around this time, I actually have a chapter about this, weirdly to connect it back to Elon Musk. It comes back to like who advises you. So it's not like everyone, as far as we understand from the evidence, it's not like everyone's like, Commodus is a psychopath at age 11. And he can go nowhere near. And Marcus Aurelius won't hear anything about it and does it anyway. As far as we're told, he seems somewhat promising. And by the way, Nero has 5 good years first. It's called the Quinquennium Neronis, where he listens to Seneca. And then he goes off the deep end. So there's some evidence that it seemed like it was going in an okay direction. And then we're told that he entrusts his son, who is not fully of age, as I understand, not he's not 30 or something. He entrusts his son to like the smartest advisors and thinkers in all of Rome, many of whom had taught Marcus himself. And the idea is like, hey, if you listen to these people, you'll do all right. And he promptly fires all of these people and does not listen to them. And so to me, it's something about, yes, power corrupts absolutely, but this is why we have corporate boards. This is why there's a cabinet. This is why there's checks and balances. And it is very hard.
So Marcus Aurelius should have figured this out and somehow like, okay, I'm going to give it to you, but you have to listen. You have to have your Seneca.
Well, no. What I'm saying is I think he did. One argument is he did basically everything you can do. And if someone chooses not to listen to their advisors and rejects all of the teachings that they've been given, decides to be a wild maniac instead, there's only so much you can do about that. Right. So I to me, I think mostly what we use classical history for is to teach kind of anecdotal lessons that are more applicable to our slightly less insane situation. So what I take from Commodus, okay, this is what happens when you reject the advice of people who are more informed than you. But I think if Marcus Aurelius was sitting here, the first question you have to ask is, what happened? This is insane. And because I don't think there's anything in the historical record that explains it. Like there's no, like he knew it was a bad idea and did it anyway. And there's no like, we were all surprised by it. It's kind of this black hole of like, you just don't know.
Right.
I mean, maybe it's,
and there's nothing in his diaries about the choice.
No. Or his letters. It's weird. But it's like Churchill's son sucks. Roosevelt's sons suck. There are very few world leaders who have had amazing children.
I mean, we're now dealing with the RFK Jr. Testimony today after RFK the first.
And that is, I mean, and you got to lay a good chunk of that not on his dad, but on his grandfather, who was a maniac and a monster.
Right.
It's almost more explicable in those full dynasties. Like King Charles, you're like, okay, this is why we don't have this system.
Right.
It's a dumb system. But what's remarkable about this period of Roman emperors is that it wasn't that system.
Yeah.
Like he was violating precedent.
Right. He didn't have to do it.
Yes.
Yeah. And there could have been some other like stop or some way to, anyway.
But what's remarkable to me, like I think that's fascinating, equally fascinating and baffling is what happens when Marcus Aurelius becomes emperor, which is the first thing that he does is give half the power to his adopted stepbrother.
Mm-hmm.
So you're like, at some level, he's not like this power-loving,
right,
like dynastical, Macbeth character.
Well, and that comes through in the diaries and in all the notes and everything. And like, and you really appreciate that kind of leadership and the humility in that kind of leadership.
Yes. And that even Hadrian, which doesn't have the son, to set this in motion is remarkable.
Which makes the ultimate decision so much more shocking.
It's fucking fascinating.
Yeah, it's like, it's a great historical, I mean, I'm not a Roman historian, but it is an amazing question. And I've always wondered about it.
I suspect the only reason there is not a book on it is that there's just not the material.
Right. Well, I mean, who knows? Maybe
no, I just mean like the evidence is so. There's like 5 lines about it. There's not, but it is maybe it would make a better novel. That would be an excellent novel about like Marcus Aurelius's choice. Yes. Why?
Yeah.
Because you could decide to make Commodus cartoonish or not And
there are all kinds of things when you have like an unqualified son like this, like the Saudi princes do this, like you give him like something amazing, like you go run this like beaubeautiful piece of land and you have like,
look, Egypt's yours,
right?
But this guy is
you're not going to make the decisions, right? Like you can go run this hotel chain, you can have a great time, we'll set you up with a nice car. Right. But like, you're not going to make the important decisions because it's not really right.
But that's also easier when you have 40 sons.
Right.
And not
one who's left after.
Yeah. And then there was one.
Yeah.
And then also, I mean, you think it's a major innovation when they're like, actually, the daughter can do it too.
Right.
Like that's like 1,000 years later that they're like, oh, maybe the daughter can do it. And then she can get married and, that's an innovation.
Are there other elements of Stoicism where you're like, this is wrong, like this doesn't apply now?
Well, I just think it's interesting. You talk about like you're sort of groomed for some job. At no point is Marcus like, I don't want to do this.
Right.
Like he would have been so much happier as like an academic or as a philosopher, or as the advisor to the emperor.
Mm-hmm.
At no point does he seem to think like, oh yeah, I can do what I want.
Right.
Because there is this I think the idea of agency is a concept that comes later.
Mm-hmm.
Or even like I just did this Daily Stoic email. There's this letter from George Washington where he's like basically like, I really hope someone does something about this slavery thing because it's like so bad.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know, maybe the guy starting a new country could do something about it. Like there's literally no one in a better position to do something about this problem than the guy writing this letter going, I hope someone does something about this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting that you get this guy who's literally the most powerful person in the world. And he seems to have this like very circumscribed understanding of like what his capacities are.
Right.
And I guess that's kind of a letdown considering how rare philosopher kings are.
Mm-hmm.
Like Jimmy Carter, one of the most thoughtful, fundamentally decent people to ever become president, to become the most powerful man in the world, like immediately gets to work and he's like, here's all the important things I want to do.
Right.
There's like not really any of that in Marcus Aurelius, which I find also fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no reforms. There's no like that scene at the beginning of Gladiator where he's like, Rome is meant to be a republic. Like I'm going to do like, I think he takes from Stoicism that that's just not how it's done in real life.
Right. So in a way, like what you're teaching is like follow these lessons, but there's some things you should do a little differently, right? If you are made emperor of the world, like you don't have to be quite as humble as the Stoics are teaching. Like you should go and like maybe fix some of the problems.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's what's in our control and then there's what's not in our control. That's the basis of Stoicism.
Yeah.
Well, also, what about all the stuff in the middle?
Right.
There's obviously some stuff that we have some ability to influence.
Right.
Or some say over, or should try.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, missing in the Stoics. There's also just there's not a resignation, but there's just an understanding that the status quo is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that I think can be helpful. But if everyone thought that, where would we be?
Right. You really don't change a whole lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's Seneca's dilemma in the court of Nero.
Yeah. And I think as I said earlier, like my running life, I think about Stoicism like a decent amount because like the daily habits of running connect very deeply. And I fully believe that part of what went wrong with my father, as I kind of alluded, is almost like he didn't have this like Stoic belief, right? But the other thing about running that's so interesting is that like sometimes you have to not accept like how fast you can go. Like when I think about my running life, you know, there are a couple of moments where I just made these huge breakthroughs by essentially denying the sort of what seemed like the obvious limit. You know, once kind of inadvertently because I didn't know how far I was running. The other like through sort of a more psychological process in my 40s. But that's kind of anti-Stoic, right? It's like, it's sort of flipping it.
It's anti-Stoic and it isn't. I mean, there's that famous line about how a reasonable person adapts themselves to the world and the unreasonable person adapts the world. It's thus progress depends on the unreasonable man. Right. So like, where would we be if there weren't people who challenged things and tried to do things and whatever? At the same time, it's easy to overstate the passivity of the Stoics. Then when you look at like who they were and what they did, I mean, like Cato doesn't accept this. The founders are like steeped in Stoicism. They're like, we should start a new country. So there is this sort of long lineage of sort of Stoics who are active in public life, who are not just like doing their duty and questioning nothing, but are kind of not just actively engaged, but like radical. There's a whole generation of Stoics known as the Stoic opposition. So you contrast Seneca in Nero's court with this guy named Thrasea, who's like basically like the perpetual thorn in Nero's side and is like active and engaged and ultimately gives his life in that sort of resistance. So like, I think our understanding of who the Stoics were is over-informed by what they wrote and not informed enough by what they did. And that is interesting because it's so much a philosophy about you're supposed to do it, not say it. And you go,
that's a funny irony.
Okay, so maybe they're like, sure, don't get too passionate, don't get too worked up about things. That's because they're super passionate, involved, active people. And like, so it's not like sometimes I'll see this because I'll post something about like, especially in this kind of very aggravating, triggering, outrageous world we live in, it's like about not being upset by everything you read. And people go, so you're just telling me to sit here and do nothing?
Suck it up.
And it's like, well, you're probably already doing nothing. So you know what I mean? You're commenting on TikTok pieces. Like, I don't think you didn't take time out of the massive, global nonprofit that you run to comment on this thing. You're already doing nothing. But like, I think they're saying, no. If you're in the arena, then you got to be in control of your emotions because the stakes are very high. And so I think we sometimes, if you take it that these are people involved in the thick of things saying, don't get triggered, don't get upset, manage your emotions, focus on what you control. That's very different than like the Epicureans in their garden saying the same thing, because the default for one is engagement and the default for the other is disengagement. So, you want to check out some books?
Yeah, I'd love to check out some books. I got time.